The galaxy had never seen anything like them. When the human fleet arrived at Zenara Prime, nobody was ready. Commander Vexus stood on the observation deck of the Collective's flagship, watching the strange vessels tear through their defenses like paper. These humans fought differently. No honor codes. No predictable patterns. Just chaos and adaptation. Dr. Lyren watched from the medical bay below. She was Centauri, a species known across 12 systems for their advanced medicine. Her 4 arms moved quickly across holographic displays, preparing for casualties. But something felt wrong in her chest, a hollow ache she had carried for cycles. The battle lasted 3 hours. The humans won. They always won. When the surrender was signed, Lyren found herself assigned to the Human Medical Exchange Program. A punishment, her superiors called it. Learn from the primitives. Understand their biology. Find their weakness. She met Dr. Sarah Chen on a Tuesday. The human woman was small, with dark hair pulled back and eyes that seemed to see everything. Sarah smiled when they met. Lyren did not understand why. The human medical bay was chaos. Loud. Disorganized. Nothing like the sterile silence of Centauri facilities. Yet they saved more lives. Lyren watched Sarah work on a dying soldier. The human used techniques that made no sense. Aggressive, risky, the soldier lived. During their 3rd week together, Sarah asked Lyren about her culture. They sat in the quiet of the night shift, drinking something Sarah called coffee. It tasted terrible. Lyren drank it anyway. She told Sarah about Centauri reproduction. How precious it was. How few of her people could conceive. How she had tried for 10 cycles with her partner. How every test came back the same. Genetically incompatible. Biologically impossible. She would never carry a child. Sarah listened without speaking. Then she said something that made no sense. In human medicine, impossible just means we haven't figured it out yet. Lyren felt something shift in her chest. Hope? No. She had buried that long ago. But curiosity, perhaps. These humans had done the impossible before. The war continued around them, but in the medical bay, something else began. Sarah started studying Centauri biology, not for weakness. For understanding. She asked questions nobody had asked before. Why did Centauri reproduction fail so often? What made genetic compatibility so rare? Lyren found herself answering. Sharing data her people had kept private for generations. Sarah's eyes would light up with each new piece of information. She saw patterns where Centauri scientists saw only random failure. One night, Sarah showed Lyren something. Human reproduction was messy, she explained. Inefficient. Full of problems. But humans had learned to work around their biology. They had developed techniques, technologies, ways to help those who struggled. Could it work for Centauri? Lyren asked. Sarah did not know. But she wanted to try. The request went up the chain of command. Centauri officials were outraged. Use human methods on their people? Never. But Lyren was different. She had nothing left to lose. She volunteered. Sarah began work immediately. She studied Centauri cellular biology for weeks. Lyren watched the human woman work 18-hour shifts, surviving on coffee and determination. It was the most human thing Lyren had ever seen. This refusal to accept limits. The first attempt failed. So did the second, and the third. Each time, Lyren felt the old familiar emptiness return. But Sarah never stopped. She would analyze the failure, adjust her approach, and try again. Other Centauri began to watch. Word spread through the medical bay. The human doctor who would not give up. The Centauri patient who dared to hope. By the 6th attempt, Sarah had modified her approach entirely. She was no longer trying to fix a Centauri biology. She was working with it, understanding it, respecting what made it different. Lyren lay on the medical bed, watching Sarah prepare the procedure. The human's hands were steady, confident. She looked at Lyren and smiled that strange human smile. Ready to make history? Lyren was not sure what she felt. Fear, hope, something between. She had spent so long being told she was broken, that her body would never do what it was meant to do. But Sarah saw her differently, not as broken, just as someone who needed a different path. The procedure took 4 hours. Sarah worked with absolute focus. Lyren watched the monitors, seeing her own cells respond to the human techniques. It was beautiful, terrifying, impossible. When it was done, Sarah squeezed Lyren's hand. The contact was strange. Humans touched so casually. But Lyren found comfort in it. "Now we wait," Sarah said. The waiting was worse than any battle. Lyren tried to work, to focus on her duties. But her mind kept returning to one thought. What if it worked? What if these impossible humans had actually done it? 2 weeks later, Lyren ran the first test, then ran it again and again. The results did not change. She walked to Sarah's office in a daze. The human looked up from her work, saw Lyren's face, and stood. Lyren could not find words. She simply showed Sarah the test results. The human doctor's eyes went wide. Then she laughed, actually laughed, and pulled Lyren into an embrace that was wholly inappropriate and absolutely perfect. It had worked. Against all logic, against all probability. The impossible had happened. Lyren was carrying a child. News spread through both fleets like wildfire. The Zentari who thought humans were primitives. The humans who barely understood alien biology. None of it mattered now. What mattered was that Sarah Chen had done what an entire civilization said could not be done. But this was only the beginning. As Lyren's pregnancy progressed, both species would learn that some boundaries were never meant to exist, and that sometimes the most human thing was to refuse to accept impossible. The announcement changed everything. What should have been a private medical success became a public spectacle within hours. Lyren stood in the briefing room, surrounded by generals and officials from both species. They talked about her like she was not there, like she was a piece of equipment instead of a person. The Zentari High Council sent 3 representatives. They wore traditional robes and expressions of cold calculation. Commander Theris spoke first. "This pregnancy must be transferred to Zentari medical facilities immediately. Our people, our science, our control." Admiral Rodriguez from the human fleet stood across the table. Dr. Chen performed this procedure. "The patient is under human medical protection. She stays here." Lyren wanted to scream. She wanted to tell them all to be quiet. This was her body, her child, her choice. But she had learned long ago that women like her did not get choices in matters of state. Sarah sat beside her, jaw tight with anger. The human doctor had been silent for 20 minutes, listening to people debate Lyren's future like it was a negotiation over supplies. Finally, Sarah stood. "This is a patient, not a political asset. Lyren decides where she receives care." The room went quiet. Commander Theris turned his cold eyes to Sarah. "You are a military officer, Dr. Chen. You follow orders. The council has decided." Sarah's smile was sharp, dangerous. "I'm a doctor first, and my patient stays with me." The meeting ended badly. Threats were made, promises of consequences. Lyren and Sarah left together, walking through corridors that suddenly felt hostile. Others Zentari watched them pass, some with curiosity, others with anger. Back in the medical bay, Sarah ran tests, lots of tests. Lyren's pregnancy was progressing differently than human ones, faster in some ways, slower in others. The child was developing well, but there were complications Sarah had not anticipated. Lyren's body was struggling to adapt. Her biology had never been designed for this. The pain started small, discomfort, but Sarah saw the warning signs in the scans. They had broken through one impossible barrier. Now they faced another. Other Zentari women began appearing at the medical bay, quietly, nervously. They had heard what Sarah did. They came with the same desperate hope Lyren had carried for so long. Could the human doctor help them too? Sarah wanted to say yes to everyone. But the military had other ideas. Commander Theris issued orders. No more Zentari were to receive human medical treatment. Dr. Chen was to focus solely on her current patient. Any violation would result in court-martial. Sarah ignored the orders. She worked through the night, seeing Zentari women in secret. Lyren helped when she could, translating medical terms, offering comfort. They transformed a storage room into a hidden clinic. It was dangerous. It was illegal. It was necessary. The first success came 3 weeks later. A Zentari woman named Caries. She had been trying to conceive for 15 cycles. Sarah used the same techniques she had developed for Lyren, modified, improved. Caries cried when the test came back positive. Tears of joy looked the same across species. But someone was watching. Someone who did not want this to succeed. Lyren noticed it first, small things. Medical supplies going missing. Her test results being accessed by unauthorized personnel. Security cameras in places they should not be. She told Sarah, who had noticed the same things. The human doctor's expression went dark. Someone wants us to fail. Someone with access to military systems. They increased security around their hidden clinic. Changed schedules. Used coded messages. But the feeling of being hunted never left. Lyren found herself looking over her shoulder constantly, protecting her growing child from threats she could not see. The pain got worse. Lyren tried to hide it, but Sarah noticed everything. More tests revealed the problem. Lyren's immune system was starting to reject the pregnancy. Her body saw the developing child as foreign, dangerous. It was trying to protect her by destroying what she wanted most. Sarah worked for 72 hours straight, searching for a solution. She tried every human immunosuppressant. Nothing worked on Zentari biology. Lyren watched the human doctor exhaust herself, surviving on coffee and pure determination. It was terrifying and beautiful at the same time. On the 4th day, Sarah found an answer. Not in human medicine, in Zentari biology itself. There was a natural compound Zentari produced during illness. Something their bodies used to calm immune responses. Sarah synthesized it, modified it, made it work for pregnancy instead of sickness. The treatment worked. Lyren's pain decreased. The baby stabilized, but it was not a cure, just management. She would need regular treatments for the rest of the pregnancy. Treatments that were not approved, not tested. Completely experimental. More Zentari women kept coming. Word had spread beyond the military station. Civilian Zentari were finding ways to reach them. Each one carried this same desperate hope. Each one was willing to risk everything for a chance. Sarah treated them all. Her hidden clinic grew, 5 patients, then 10, then 20. Each success made the risk greater. Each pregnant Zentari woman became evidence of their illegal operation. The war between humans and Zentari continued in space above them. Ships destroyed, lives lost. But in the medical bay, a different kind of battle was being fought. One that might matter more than any military victory. Lyren felt her child move for the first time during a supply run. She was in a storage corridor, alone, when the flutter happened in her belly. So small, so precious. She put her hand on her stomach and cried. Tears of joy, tears of fear. This little life depended on her. On Sarah, on their ability to keep fighting impossible odds. That night, security forces raided a section of the station, not the medical bay, not yet, but close enough to be a warning. Someone was getting closer to discovering their operation. Someone with power and resources. Sarah and Lyren sat together in the quiet after the raid. The human doctor looked exhausted, determined. They are going to find us eventually, Sarah said. When they do, everything changes. Lyren nodded. She had known this from the beginning. The moment she agreed to hope. The moment she let Sarah try the impossible. There would be consequences for both of them. For all the women they were helping. But as she felt another small flutter in her belly, Lyren knew the truth. Some things were worth any cost. Some battles had to be fought, no matter the odds. And sometimes, the most revolutionary act was simply refusing to accept the word impossible. The storm was coming, they both knew it. But they would face it together. The discovery came at dawn. Security forces stormed the storage room clinic while Sarah was treating a patient. Alarms blared. Boots hammered against metal floors. Lyren heard the commotion from her quarters and ran, her hand instinctively protecting her swollen belly. She arrived to chaos. 20 Zentari women in various stages of pregnancy being herded into the corridor. Sarah stood between them and the security forces, her face calm but her eyes blazing. Commander Theris was there, flanked by armed guards. Dr. Chen, you are under arrest for violation of direct military orders, unauthorized medical procedures, conspiracy against the Zentari Council. Theris gestured to his guards. Take her. Sarah did not resist. But as they placed restraints on her wrists, she looked at Lyren. One look that said everything. Protect them. Keep going. Do not stop. The pregnant Zentari women were separated, questioned. Some were sent back to Zentari facilities. Others disappeared into detention. Lyren used her position as the first successful case to avoid the worst. But she was placed under constant surveillance. 2 guards outside her door. Every movement monitored. She was allowed 1 visitor. Sarah, in restraints, escorted by 4 guards. They sat across from each other in a gray interrogation room, not allowed to touch, barely allowed to speak. Are you okay? Sarah asked first. Always the doctor. Always thinking of her patient. Lyren nodded. The baby is fine. But the others need treatment. Without you, they will lose their children. Sarah's jaw tightened. I know. I am working on it. Working on it. Even in custody, even facing court-martial, Sarah Chen was planning. Lyren felt something warm in her chest. Hope, maybe. Or just recognition of what humanity really was. This stubborn refusal to quit. The visit ended too quickly. Sarah was led away. Lyren returned to her guarded quarters, mind racing. She could not help the others alone. She did not have Sarah's knowledge, but she had something else. She had connections. That night, she used the medical station's internal network. Carefully, quietly, she sent messages to the Zentari women Sarah had helped. Coded words. Meeting times. They needed to organize, to protect each other. To survive until Sarah could help them again. The response surprised her. Within hours, she had replies from 15 women. They were scared. But they were also angry. They had tasted hope for the first time in their lives. They would not let it be taken away. They met in hidden corners of the station. Storage bays during shift changes. Empty observation decks at night. Lyren taught them what Sarah had taught her. How to monitor their own conditions. Warning signs to watch for. Ways to help each other. A human nurse named Marcus found them on the 3rd night. Lyren tensed, expecting another raid, but Marcus held up his hands. Dr. Chen sent me, before they arrested her. She said you might need help. Marcus had medical training. Not as extensive as Sarah's, but enough. He brought supplies, smuggled medications. Information about Sarah's treatment protocols. The network grew stronger, but danger grew with it. Someone wanted this to fail. Lyren was certain now. The raids were too precise. The security too tight. Someone high up in command was actively working against them. The attempt on her life came during a scheduled medical checkup. She was in an exam room, alone when the power cut out. Emergency lights flickered on. And then a figure in the darkness, moving fast, something sharp gleaming in their hand. Lyren dodged instinctively. Her attacker was Zentari, she could tell from the silhouette. The blade sliced through the air where her throat had been. She screamed. The attacker lunged again. Marcus burst through the door, followed by security. The attacker fled through a ventilation shaft. Gone before anyone could identify them, but the message was clear. Someone wanted Lyren dead, wanted her baby dead, wanted all of this to end. Security increased after that, but Lyren did not feel safer. She felt trapped, hunted. Every shadow held potential danger. Every stranger could be the one who wanted her dead. Sarah heard about the attack in her cell. She demanded to see Lyren, was denied. So she did what humans do best. She adapted. She found another way. A military communications officer was young, human, and sympathetic to Sarah's cause. Sarah talked to her during guard changes, told her about the pregnant Zentari women, about the mothers who would lose their children without help, about what was really at stake. The officer's name was Lieutenant Keiko Tanaka. She had a sister who struggled to have children. She understood. And she had access to communication systems. Within a week, Sarah was running her clinic from a detention cell. Keiko relayed messages between Sarah and the network. Diagnostic data went in. Treatment protocols came out. It was slow, dangerous, but it worked. More Zentari women joined the network. Not just from the station, from other ships, other facilities. The word spread like fire through dry grass. The human doctor who could do the impossible. The Zentari women who refused to give up. The Zentari High Council noticed. Emergency meetings were called. Debates raged. Some wanted to shut down the network completely. Others saw opportunity. A medical breakthrough that could solve their species' greatest crisis. But accepting it meant accepting human help. Accepting that they had failed where humans succeeded. Pride was a powerful force. For some on the council, it was stronger than hope. Commander Tharis led the faction that wanted Sarah and her network destroyed. He gave speeches about Zentari independence, about the danger of human influence, about maintaining control. But Lyren saw the truth in his eyes. Fear. He was afraid of change. Afraid of losing power. The network prepared for the worst. They stockpiled supplies, created redundant communication channels, planned escape routes. Marcus trained more human and Zentari medical staff in secret. If Sarah could not help them directly, others would carry her work forward. Lyren felt her daughter kick during one of these planning sessions. Strong movements now. The baby was growing healthy despite everything. Proof that Sarah's methods worked. Proof that hope was not foolish. She put her hand on her belly and made a silent promise. She would fight for this child. For all the children these women were carrying. For the future that Sarah had made possible. No matter what it cost. The military tribunal was scheduled for the following week. Sarah would face charges. Possible execution for treason. The network would be exposed. Everything they had built would be at risk. But as Lyren looked around at the faces of women who had been told they were broken, who had been denied hope by their own people, who now carried life inside them, she knew something the council did not. They had already won. The network was too big now, too spread out, too determined. You could not kill an idea whose time had come. You could not stop women who had nothing left to lose and everything to gain. The war in space continued. Ships destroyed each other in pointless violence. But here, in the hidden corners of the station, in the secret messages between women, in the quiet determination of those who refused to accept impossible, a different kind of revolution was beginning. And revolutions, once started, were very hard to stop. The tribunal chamber was cold, sterile, built for judgment, not mercy. Sarah sat in the center, still in restraints, flanked by guards. Above her, a panel of 5 judges, 3 Zentari, 2 human, all of them looking at her like she was a problem to be solved. Lyren sat in the observation gallery, her belly now obviously swollen, 6 months along. Her daughter moved constantly now, as if sensing her mother's fear. Around Lyren sat other pregnant Zentari women, 20 of them, all showing. All living proof of what Sarah had done. Commander Tharis presented the charges. His voice was formal, clinical. Dr. Sarah Chen violated direct orders on 47 separate occasions. She performed unauthorized medical procedures on Zentari subjects. She endangered military operations through her actions. She ignored the chain of command repeatedly. The evidence is clear. The punishment must match the crime. He called witnesses, officers who testified about Sarah's disobedience, security footage showing the secret clinic, medical records that were supposed to be confidential. Each piece of evidence built a case for execution. Sarah said nothing during the presentation. She sat quietly watching the judges. Her expression was calm, too calm. Lyren knew that look. Sarah was planning something. When it was time for Sarah's defense, she stood. The guards tensed, but she just looked up at the judges. I have no defense for breaking orders. I did it, repeatedly, knowingly. I would do it again. The courtroom went silent. Even Therese looked surprised. This was not how defendants usually acted. Sarah continued. But I want to present evidence of my own. Not about whether I broke rules. About why those rules existed in the first place. She nodded to Lieutenant Keiko, who sat at the defense table. Keiko activated a holographic display. Data filled the air, charts, graphs, medical records. This is Centauri reproductive data for the last 500 years, Sarah said. Birth rates declining, genetic compatibility becoming rarer, entire family lines ending because women could not conceive. You all know this. The Council knows this. It has been classified as a natural decline. A tragic but unavoidable reality. She paused, letting the data sink in. Except it was not natural, and it was not unavoidable. The display changed. New data appeared. Research files, classified documents. Lyren leaned forward, her heart racing. Where had Sarah gotten this? 200 years ago, Centauri scientists discovered the cause of declining fertility. A genetic mutation spreading through the population. They also discovered it could be fixed. Relatively easily. Using gene therapy techniques the Centauri already possessed. Therese shot to his feet. This is classified military intelligence. How dare you? Sit down, Commander, one of the human judges said sharply. Let her finish. Sarah's voice was steady, cold. The Council decided not to fix it. They classified the research, destroyed most of it. Why? Because a population struggling to reproduce is easier to control. Women desperate for children will follow any order, accept any restriction. Trade freedom for the hope of motherhood. The observation gallery erupted, Centauri women shouting. Some in disbelief, others in rage. Guards moved to restore order, but the damage was done. The secret was out. Sarah kept talking over the noise. I found fragments of this research in old medical databases, pieced it together. The solution was there all along. Your own people discovered it. And your leaders buried it. She turned to look directly at Therese. That is why you want me dead, Commander. Not because I broke rules. Because I proved the Council has been lying for 2 centuries. Because every woman in this room is evidence of that lie. Therese's face went purple with rage. She is a spy. A saboteur. This is human propaganda designed to. I volunteer to testify. The voice came from the observation gallery. A Centauri woman stood, old, distinguished, wearing the robes of a Council scientist. Lyren recognized her, Dr. Sareth, one of the most respected researchers in Centauri space. Sareth walked to the front of the chamber. I was part of the original research team, 203 years ago. We found the solution. We were ordered to destroy our work. Most of us complied. She looked at the judges. I kept a copy. Hidden for 2 centuries. Waiting for the day someone would be brave enough to use it. She pulled out a data chip. This contains the complete original research. Proof of everything Dr. Chen just said. Proof that the Council chose power over the survival of our species. The tribunal chamber descended into chaos. Centauri judges demanding to see the data. Human judges calling for order. Therese screaming about treason. Security forces not knowing who to arrest. Sarah remained calm in the center of it all. She caught Lyren's eye across the room, smiled slightly. They had gambled everything on this moment, on the truth being powerful enough to protect them. The head judge, a human admiral named Williams, finally restored order. He reviewed Dr. Sareth's data personally. His face grew darker with each page. When he finished, he looked at the Zentari judges. "Did you know about this?" 2 of them shook their heads. They looked genuinely shocked. The third, a council member named Vareth, said nothing. His silence was answer enough. Admiral Williams stood. "This tribunal is suspended. These charges are dismissed. Dr. Chen is released immediately." He turned to Vareth. "You, however, are now under investigation for crimes against the Zentari people." Guards moved toward Vareth. He tried to flee, failed. As they led him away, he spat at Sarah. "You have doomed us all. Humans cannot be trusted. This alliance will destroy the Zentari." Sarah's restraints were removed. She rubbed her wrists, then walked straight to Lyren, pulled her into an embrace. "Are you okay? Is the baby okay?" Lyren laughed through tears. "We are fine, you insane, wonderful human. You could have been executed. Worth it," Sarah said simply. The other pregnant Zentari women surrounded them, some crying, some angry. All of them free for the first time, free from lies, free from control, free to make their own choices about their bodies and their futures. But freedom came with complications. News of the tribunal spread across both fleets within hours. Zentari citizens learned their government had lied to them for centuries. Protests erupted on multiple worlds. The council faced calls for complete dissolution. Some Zentari saw this as liberation. Others saw it as human interference destroying their society. The divide grew deeper, more dangerous. That night, Lyren and Sarah sat together in the medical bay. The war outside had paused, but a new kind of conflict was beginning. Civil war among the Zentari. Those who wanted change versus those who feared it. Sarah ran another scan on Lyren's pregnancy. The baby was healthy, strong, due in 3 months. "She's going to be born into a very complicated galaxy," Sarah said. Lyren put her hand over Sarah's. "She will be born into a galaxy where truth matters more than power. Where impossible things happen every day. Where a human doctor and a Zentari woman can change history together," Sarah smiled. No pressure on the kid then. They laughed. But both knew the hardest part was still coming. The truth was out. The lies were exposed. But revolutions did not end with revelations. They ended with blood or with change. Sometimes both. Outside the medical bay, the galaxy was splitting apart. Inside, a child grew strong. Proof that some divisions were never meant to exist, that some barriers were made to be broken. The breaking point had passed. Now came the real fight. Not for survival, but for what kind of future would emerge from the chaos, and whether that future had room for hope.